So, I just got done watching James Gunn's Suicide Squad of the Galaxy, and it was pretty good. Honestly, after the shit show that was Suicide Squad back in 2016, I didn't really know what to expect out of this movie. I really wanted it to be good because DC has pretty much wanted these guys to be their Guardians of the Galaxy for years now, and this time they even hired the director of the Guardians movies to get the job done. And with the history of the DCEU, it's kind of a mixed bag as far as whether a film turns out good or bad. And I thought to myself, if they can make a Guardians-esque movie with the darker, edgier tone found in the DC universe, at least compared to the tone of the MCU, then this might be a really fun movie. So did they manage to do it? Well, yeah, this movie is pretty good. This movie is honestly one of the better comic book movies out there. And this really does feel like a comic book movie. It feels like it was taken straight out of one, much like Guardians of the Galaxy. And I know I've been mentioning Guardians a lot already, but when I was watching this movie, I couldn't help thinking that this felt like a mix between Guardians and Deadpool. It's got the licensed soundtrack and a lot of the wacky characters and scenarios of Guardians. I mean, Yondu and Mantis even make an appearance in this movie, mixed in with the violence and humor of Deadpool. Just not nearly as profane, explicit, and meta. But when I say that this movie has some wacky characters and scenarios, I mean it. This movie is insane. Spoilers in case you didn't see it at the beginning of the video, but this movie ends with Margot Robbie diving into the eyeball of a giant all-powerful kaiju starfish where she swims in its eyeball fluid as an army of rats controlled by this girl travel into the eyeball with her and destroy the starfish from the inside out. And if that doesn't intrigue you, I don't know what to tell you, man. But let's go a bit deeper into this movie because I want to talk about a lot of the stuff that I liked. First off, the pacing of this movie is great. There are just about no breaks. You are thrown from one fun situation to the next. Right at the beginning of this movie, we are thrown straight into a mission. And a benefit of a movie like this is that you don't really need the other movies in this universe for this movie to make sense. Because even if you hadn't seen a single DC movie, you would still enjoy this movie just fine. They pretty much explain everything you need to know at the beginning when they show these guys in prison, and Amanda Waller says, "You know the drill, we're sending you on a mission, and if you complete it, you get 10 years off your prison sentence, but if you're unsuccessful, you die." Simple as that. Alright, let's go. That's basically all you really need to know. I certainly think the context of some of the other movies helps this movie, but you definitely don't need those movies. But anyways, they send these guys on a mission, and right away, these guys are killed. And I thought this was spectacular. Not only does it establish the type of humor and violence that's going to be seen for the rest of this movie, but I also watched the 2016 Suicide Squad movie recently, and I couldn't help thinking how much better this scene was done compared to the scene in the 2016 movie where this one guy, I seriously don't remember his name, he was only shown for like 5 seconds and I almost missed his death, but he tries to escape right as the mission starts and he's killed instantly. And the same thing happens here in this movie where the characters die at the beginning of a mission, except it's turned up to a 10. They are not afraid at showing any sort of gruesome, violent death. And they even add a bit of dark humor to it to lighten the mood, and I loved all of it. It is done so much better in this movie. Like, it's legitimately funny. Because whether that same scene in the 2016 movie was intended for comedic purposes or not, it doesn't matter because it just wasn't funny, and overall, it just felt pointless. But I also like the next scene because it also shows the audience how much fun this movie is going to be. The song playing in the background definitely helps, but we see the staff paying up bets on what members of the Suicide Squad they thought were going to die, and this little scene is great because it shows how lighthearted this movie is. Even with a massacre that just happened, this movie has fun with it and never lets things get too serious. But then we find out that team was just a diversion and we meet the real Suicide Squad, led by Will Smith. Heimdall. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, sometimes it just feels like they're the exact same character. But when it comes to the actual Suicide Squad, these guys really just carry this movie. The way they interact with one another and work as a team is great. And not only that, they also get a bit of character development as well, which is something that was seriously lacking in the other one. Like, I don't even remember a single thing about Boomerang, Killer Croc, or Katana in that movie. This movie actually gives us backstories on some of the characters like Ratcatcher and Bloodsport. And when it doesn't do that, it gives us characteristics or little quirks of these characters that permeate throughout the rest of the movie. The villains, I have to say though, were not really great. This president dude and his general and all the soldiers that were under his command, I felt like they didn't really play a part at all in the movie. They sort of just existed to be punching bags for both the Suicide Squad and the actual main villain at the end of the movie. Like, I'm serious, these guys are just torn apart and executed and mind control killed all throughout the movie, that it's kinda sad how little of a threat they are to the things that are more than just regular people in this movie. Which reminds me, the scene where Harley Quinn is just tearing these guys up as she's escaping being held hostage by them really just shows off the special effects and how cool some of the shots are in this movie. And this one, which was probably the coolest shot of the entire movie in my opinion, where Colonel Rick Flag is just going crazy and fighting nothing, all in the reflection of this helmet. But also, some of the humor just didn't land for me. I know what I said earlier about that opening scene being legitimately funny, but there were other parts that just didn't do it. There were times, like the scene where the characters talk about Milton's death, where it felt like some of the Marvel movies, where the jokes just go on a little too long, and instead of being funny, it just gets awkward and cringy. I don't know, I could go on talking about each scene of the movie, and based on what I've already said about the first few scenes, I was planning on doing that, but there's really not a whole lot to say. If I had to say something else, I guess I could say when it came to the characters, which again were great, I liked Harley Quinn and Peacemaker the best. Margot and John both really played their roles to perfection. Harley's rocky relationship with the Joker over the past few movies carries over well into this movie, and Peacemaker was really interesting as this douchey Captain America character with this messed up idea of justice. And if you've seen my Falcon and the Winter Soldier review and you heard what I said about John Walker, you would know why I like Peacemaker so much. And I'm excited to see that Peacemaker spin-off series that's set to come out on HBO Max sometime in the future, even if it did ruin his death in the movie for me. But yeah, this movie is not really a movie that you can analyze very deeply. There were a few twists in the end that I liked. The tone was great, the plot was simple enough to be followed, the characters were good, and overall it was just a really fun movie. A lot of the scenes were just mindless fun, and I think that really worked for this kind of movie. So in the end, I'm going to give The Suicide Squad an 8.5 out of 10.